Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Ella if you're new here, if not then hello. I hope you guys are doing well. Before I start this video, I just want to welcome any new people that have subscribed here. Thank you so much for checking my channel out. I post new videos every Wednesday and I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments. For today's video, I'm going to be testing out 5 of the most popular note-taking methods to see which one is best. There are tons of different techniques out there and I know that different methods work for different people, but I wanted to take the 5 most popular ones and put them to the test to see exactly which one is best. So the 5 methods that I am going to test out include the Cornell method, the mind map method, the question and answer method, the charting method, and finally the outline method. I'm going to be making notes out of a textbook and each day I'm going to be testing out a new method. At the end of the day I'll also be rating them based on how easy it was to make notes, how quickly I was able to make them, and how much I felt had gone in. So if you guys are excited to see which method will win, then make sure to give the video a thumbs up. Let me know below which you think will win and which techniques you use yourself. Without further ado, let's get straight into day 1. Okay, it is officially day 1 and the first method that I'm going to be doing today is the Cornell method, and the Cornell method basically has 3 sections of the page. It has a section down here on the left hand side for cues such as names and titles, and then the main section of the page is kind of the information, and at the very bottom there's a box for the summary. So that's what I'm going to be trying today. I'm going to be using this textbook here throughout the week. This is the Fundamentals of Psychology from and yeah, like I said, I'm going to be using that for the whole week just to make it fair. And I've never used the Cornell method before, so I don't really know what to expect. I have a feeling that I won't really like it just because I use quite a lot of space on the page and this seems to kind of reduce the amount of things that you can write on each page, but I will give it a go and I will rate it at the end of the day. So let's start with day 1. Okay, so I've just finished pretty much the first paragraph and as you can see I've already filled out about a quarter of the page. I do have quite big handwriting, but because I like to have spaces and draw arrows and things like that, I'm not entirely sure whether this Cornell method is perfect for me. So that is something to bear in mind. If you've got big handwriting, then this might not be suited for you, but I will carry on and rate it at the end of the day. So let's continue. Okay, so I've written all of my notes now. I've done quite a few pages of notes, and just as a recommendation, this book is really good for anyone kind of beginning with psychology. It does give a really good overview of the fundamentals and the basics of psychology, so I do really recommend this. But in regards to the Cornell method, I'm now going to be rating it. So my overall thoughts are that I really like the cues section. I like it especially if I have any definitions that I need to know or any names and things like that. In regards to the summary box, I'm not a massive fan simply because in psychology there are lots of different topics and some can be quite small and some can be quite big. So I find that sometimes the summary box isn't actually needed. In regards to the ratings, this is probably like a 8 or 9 out of 10 for easiness. It is really easy, except one thing is it doesn't allow you to write that much down because of the headings for the cues and the summary. So that is one thing to bear in mind. In terms of how quick it was really quick. It was probably a 9. All you have to do at the beginning is draw down the lines and things like that, but it was pretty quick. And in terms of how much I think went in, I actually think this was pretty good for allowing me to remember things and kind of learn new things. So I would say it was actually good for things going into my brain. It was probably like an 8. I really like the idea about having cues because if you're going over revision, you can really quickly look up the cues and then see the definition or what you need to know. Overall, I would probably give it maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10. Like I said, I'm just not a massive fan of the summary box. I think it's a really good idea, but maybe not for psychology. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a massive fan of how little space there is to write. Like I said, I do have quite big handwriting, so I found that I did have to use quite a few pages, which is unfortunate. So I would bear that in mind if you've got quite big handwriting like mine. So that's it for day 1. I have now tried out the Cornell method. I rated it 8 out of 10, and I'll see you tomorrow when I try out my next method. Welcome to day 2 of testing out popular note-taking methods. Today's method that I'm going to be testing is the mind map method. I've done this before, I do quite like mind maps, but it'll be interesting to see how it works with this specific textbook. If you don't know what the mind map method looks like, it's where you take a topic, put it in the middle of the page, and have lines of information coming out. It'll be interesting to see whether this works for me and with psychology, because in psychology there is a lot of evaluation that needs to be done. You need to weigh up the pros and cons of a certain topic or study. So I look forward to seeing if this method will work for that. So without further ado, I've got my textbook here that I used yesterday, and let's just get straight into the mind map. Okay, so I finished day 2 doing the mind map method. This is what my mind map looks like. I did it all about evolutionary psychology, learning about natural selection and the goals to reproduce and things like that. So onto our ratings. In terms of how easy it was, the mind map was really easy to do. I'd rate it probably an 8 out of 10. The only issue I would have is that because you're drawing lines to each different information, again, it can use up a lot of space, and you can't really write in sentences. You kind of have to jot down the notes. In terms of how quick it was really quick to use. I didn't have any difficulties there. I'd just rate it a 10. But when it comes to how much went in, I'd probably say much less than yesterday's method. I'd probably rate it maybe a 6 out of 10, simply because there isn't that much room to write. You have to write in note form, and when it comes to evaluating, there isn't really any space to do a full-on evaluation, which is a shame. I do like it for kind of revision and things like that. I feel like this would be a good revision technique, but when it comes to actual note-taking, I don't think this is the best. So overall, I'd probably rate the mind map method a 6 out of 10. Not as good as yesterday's Cornell method, but I did enjoy it and I think it would be good for revision. So that is day 2, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good morning guys, it is currently day 3, and today I'm going to be testing out the question and answer method. This is quite self-explanatory. It's basically where you take notes by writing a question from your notes and answering it, and that way that is how you learn. You learn by answering questions. So I'm going to be trying that out today. I'm really excited for this one. I have a feeling that it can be quite useful. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube test out this method and they've had some really good results, so I am excited to try this out. I think for this specific textbook is actually going to work out pretty well, because there's a lot of biological psychology in this textbook, and that is what I find most trickiest. So I'm just excited to try it out and see if it does work. And yeah, I'll tell you my results and my ratings at the end of the day when I've finished. So let's get into it. Okay, so I've just finished my notes, and I was actually really surprised with how well the question and answer method went. This is what my notes look like. I actually wrote about ethical issues and certain studies that were considered unethical, such as the Milgram study, the Zimbardo study, and things like that. And I found the question and answer method really useful for these type of things. I think this method is most useful when it comes to learning about studies, because for instance, when I was writing my notes about the Milgram study, I was able to ask the questions such as what did the participants have to do and what were the results. So when it comes to revision, this can be really useful. This method is also really beneficial when it comes to preparing for tutorials or seminars, because I know a lot of conversations in those are based around question and answers. Okay, moving on to the ratings. When it comes to how easy it was to write the notes, what really surprised me is that when I was reading through the textbook, I actually had already thought about the questions that I was going to write down. So I'd say that it was really easy and probably give it a 9 out of 10. When it comes to how quick it was to write the notes, again, it was really quick. It was probably a 9 out of 10 again, because like I said earlier, I was able to think of some questions as I was reading the textbook, and so when it came to the actual note taking, it was really quick. And finally, rating on how much I think went in. I think this was probably the best method so far in terms of what went in. I'd probably actually rate it a 9 or 10 out of 10, simply because I think when it comes to revision, this is going to be really useful. I can just look at the questions, cover up the answers, and kind of memorize things that way. So yeah, I'd give this a 9 out of 10 for how much went in. So as you can see, these ratings are really high. They're the highest out of the last 2 methods that I tried, but obviously it's not over yet. I still have 2 more to go, but overall I would rate the question and answer method a 9 out of 10. Hello and welcome to day 4 of testing out popular note-taking methods. Today's method that I'm going to be trying is the charting method. So the charting method is where you take your piece of paper and you basically make a chart or a table. You have different columns and different rows for different information. Some of the headings can include advantages, disadvantages, or just your basic information. So that's what I'm going to be trying out today. My initial thoughts are that I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work for psychology. I think it would work really well for evaluation, but when it comes to just normal lecture note-taking, I'm not entirely sure whether this will be perfect. But when it comes to other subjects such as the science subjects, I think this could be really good. So I think that's about it for the introduction, so I'm just going to dive right into it. Okay, so I've actually stopped earlier than I usually do. I haven't completely finished this chapter simply because this method just isn't really working for me. It's not really working for this topic and what I'm note-taking and what I'm writing down. This is what the notes look like. As you can see, I haven't completely finished it. I just found that because you're kind of constrained to columns and rows, I wasn't able to write as much detail, wasn't able to kind of expand on points and things like that because everything is constrained into a square. I think this method would be good for evaluation when you want to evaluate a study, such as including advantages and disadvantages, but for just normal note-taking if you're in a lecture, I don't think this particular method is great, or at least it isn't for me. Okay, moving on into the ratings. In terms of how easy it was, for me it wasn't very easy. I can't really imagine going into a lecture theatre and having to make this table and chart, and like I said, it's just not very easy when you want to go back and add in some things. Moving on into how quick it wasn't very quick. Like I said, I really can't imagine making this when it comes to lecture notes. I think this would probably be a better method for revision because you don't really need to worry about how quick things are when it comes to revision. And yeah, I just think it would be better for evaluation of studies after you've learned about them. In terms of how much I think went in, to be honest, because I had different headings such as information, evidence, pros and cons, I found that I was able to easily see the information, so that way I guess it did go in quite well. But when it comes to lectures, seminars, tutorials, and you're writing the notes then and there, I don't think it will make a big difference on how much goes in. I think you'd have to look back again over it for revision. So for how much went in, I'm gonna say 7 out of 10. Okay, so that is my view on the charting method. Definitely not as good as yesterday's method, and overall I'd probably rate it 6.5 out of 10. Hi guys, welcome to day 5 and the last day of testing out popular note-taking methods. Today is the last method that I'm going to be trying, and it is the outline method. This is probably one of the most common methods that people use. A lot of students use this, and it is where you have your piece of paper, you include the main topic at the top, then the subtopic and any supporting information or evidence, and then you basically carry on working like that with subtopics and new topics. I sometimes use this method when it comes to note-taking. I kind of combine it with sentences because this method usually uses shorter phrases and not full-on sentences. So I do have some knowledge on this, And yeah, I'm just going to be trying it out today, and like all of the other methods and all of the other days, I'm going to be giving it my honest opinions and ratings. So the topic that I'm going to be using today is biology, and I'm going to be making notes about the central nervous system. I think this method will be really good when it comes to biological psychology, so I'm really excited to try it out, and yeah, let's go. Okay, I have just finished the notes. This is what they look like, and I have completely finished all of the different note-taking methods. So my thoughts on the outline method, this by far was my favourite, and I think it is the best for note-taking. It was really quick and easy, and it really allows some flexibility, whether you want to write in sentences or in short phrases. It's very much up to the individual, which I love. It doesn't take up huge amounts of space like some other methods, and it's just the easiest I find. So I'm going to go straight into the ratings. In terms of how easy it was, like I said, super easy, definitely a 10 out of 10. You can really cater it to yourself and how you like to write notes. All you have to do is have a topic and a subtopic, and basically just have some supporting evidence, which every subject has. In terms of how quick it was, it really takes up no time at all. Again, it's a 10 out of 10. You don't have to do any fancy tables, you don't have to draw out anything. All you have to do is lay it out as a topic, a subtopic, and supporting evidence. And finally, in terms of how much I think went in, I think this method is the best for remembering things because of how easy and how clear it is on the page. One thing I do want to mention is that although I think the outline method is the best for note-taking, especially when you're in lectures or watching a lecture, but I don't think it is the best for revision. Although it was really clear and flexible, I don't think this note-taking method would be great for revision, simply because you can include a lot of information on a page. If your revision notes look like this, I would think that you would have a hard time remembering everything and you'd have a lot of different pages. Because of that, I think another method would be great for revision, and that is the question and answer method. But since this video isn't about revision notes and it's about note-taking, overall the winner with a 10 out of 10 is the outline method. Okay, so that's the end of me testing out 5 of the best note-taking methods. Just as a recap on the scores, I'm now going to be ranking them based on worst to best. So with a score of 6 out of 10 is the mind map method. Now, although I really like using mind maps for revision, I found that it wasn't the best for note-taking. Making mind maps in class can be time consuming, and I found that less went in than the other methods. The next ranking with a score of 6.5 out of 10 is the charting method. Now, I really dislike this method specifically because of how little room there was to write. I found it was hard to fit in all of the information into the square boxes because of the rows and columns. However, I think this method could be useful for studies and evaluating those studies, but when it comes to basic note-taking, this one only scored a 6.5. The next method scored 8 out of 10, and that was the first method I tried, the Cornell method. I like the idea of this method, however, when it came to actually writing the notes, I found that it took up too much room of the page. I really like the idea of the summary box, but I found that it wasn't necessary, especially at the end of each page. And the second best note-taking method I found with a score of 9 out of 10 was the question and answer method. I really like this method, however it didn't go first because I think it would be best for revision and not note-taking. It can be really hard coming up with questions within a lecture when you are learning new things, hence why I think this would be the best for revision but not the best for note-taking. And finally, with a score of 10 out of 10 is the outline method. I absolutely love this method. I think it is the best for note-taking. It's easy, flexible, and really quick to use. So those are my final thoughts and ratings on the 5 methods that I tested out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You'll have to let me know below which method you use and whether you correctly guess which method would win. So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!